Hello and welcome to 52 Weeks. This week we're going to be continuing through Chapter 4 in the Parks, Civic, and Open Spaces. And specifically we're going to be looking at the next 6 weeks on the types of parks and public space that are discussed in Chapter 4. In this week we're going to be finishing up Chapter 4, and the segment we're focusing on is number 6, campuses. This will finally wrap up Chapter 4. Campuses are important all around the city because it's a larger expanse and relationship of public green space and institutional use. They also can become a place for public use as well if it's in a landscape system. So when we look at campuses, this is a communal landscape system. The quote from the comp plan is, "A campus is a collection of buildings that are connected by a system of communal landscape spaces. Although they are usually developed by institutions or government entities, they can also be created by private entities. Campus spaces are often treated as semi-public spaces by the community." So in Goal 4.16, City's Campus Connections, the recommendation here is that the City of Harrisburg should engage in dialogue with regional higher education and specialty training institutions to market campus properties to educational and research and development users. There's a map here. This diagram shows some of the existing and proposed ideas. So we have some that have been here for a long time. Of course, starting at the Capitol Complex, it's kind of the oldest campus that's in the city proper. And going from there is probably the area of the State Hospital, the Hack Campus. We've got the Farm Show Complex, the National Guard facilities. We also have the Division Street campuses. And also a new one that's been developed and thinking about Cameron Street and her is a Commerce Center. All these campuses thought about in a way to benefit the local adjacent neighborhoods. So focus first on the Division Street campuses. Building in green space is what's important. You can see some of the pictures. We already talked about the buildings that are up there, the William Penn School, as well as the Zembo Shrine and the Scottish Rite Theater. So we can be thinking about all this pulled together around this space, buildings and greens. We got Dixon Center, Italian Lake, William Penn and Camp Curtin campuses, Zembo Mosque, Scottish Rite Temple. We got Polyclinic Hospital Complex, Hack Wildwood Campus, the Farm Show Complex, and the PA Department of Agriculture Campus. How do we tie all this together? Well, one thing that is really important, again, that's been discussed in previous chapters, is to connecting it through a street and bridge system. The objective 4.16.2, create a greenbelt connection between Riverfront Park and the Wildwood Park, providing a connection within the city as part of the green grid. So this looks at bridging over the railroad tracks, connecting Division over to Industrial Road. This would begin to knit that together as far as a thoroughfare, and if it's part of the green grid, it's also connected through bikeways and green transit. A diversity of uses along Division Street can be enhanced by increasing density and diversity of housing types, introducing limited apartment, condominium, and cooperative housing. This is really would be something to think about. How do you supply the needs of the campuses around there as well as the needs of the neighborhood, and not inundate the neighborhood with any of the new uses, and trying to find a balance for this. So this would be a good planning process when you look at several small area plans working together for a larger master plan of this whole entire comprehensive plan. So this is how the scales of these things work. So that'd be something to focus. Looking at the Division Street campus from an aerial photo, action 4.16.2.2, prioritize the effort and repurpose William Penn campus as an educational facility. This is something that I think is important. This is the data that shows from everybody who was polled and had been presented information at the comprehensive plan community meetings. William Penn is held near and dear into everybody's heart in Harrisburg. It's got a long history. It also has a presence on Division Street. To look at this legacy that's there and to leave it to be, it has not been mothballed well. It is something that does need attention, and it is something that can be revitalized and brought back as education facility. And if it's an educational facility, it's something that could be tied back into the 7th Street Plaza, as well as Dixon Center and any other uses that are nearby, that it becomes a resource for the Camp Curtin neighborhood and beyond. With William Penn campus, the ground should also be better connected with surrounding buildings, the Zembo Shrine, the Hadi Mosque, and the Scottish Rite Temple. Currently, these buildings have more parking than they need, and the site could be planned to share parking. The yielding sites along 3rd Street for potential mixed-use multifamily housing development. So we know that there's an influx of need in housing. This would be something to be considering as multifamily housing and how to right-size the housing that's affordable in this area. Part of the Division Street campuses, we have Italian Lake, Action 4.16.2.3, strengthen the connection between Italian Lake and the surrounding neighborhoods and the campuses. This is a no-brainer. A lot of people go to Italian Lake, either jog, bike, or just walk and sit. It's a very serene place and part of the original greening of Harrisburg and City Beautiful movement. So this is a tremendous resource that the city should continue to protect and figure out a way to allow it to be more accessible from those around it, that we just don't build housing around it and objectify it as it's our own thing. This is something that's for everybody in Harrisburg. The Marine and Naval Reserve Center that's up there is Action 4.16.2.8. Engage a reserve center in dialogue to address the closed land use pattern of the current site. Explore options to relocate to another site in the city. So this is one thing that when you put certain uses in, that begins to close off the neighborhood and it's not as permeable as possible. People just can't walk through the public spaces and get to other places in this neighborhood. So that's something to address from a planning point of view and dialogue. Where is a transition out of in 5 to 10 years? Where could that be? The Dixon Center campus, we've got the state system that's up here of higher education. This is the physical potential for the state system to have a nearly ready-made university is clear. Benefit to the city as a whole in the uptown areas of the city and overall strength of the educational offerings in the city would be transformative. Looking at how to knit this back in and build this up would be a very helpful thing for the entire city. Harrisburg Community College main campus. Got Hack Wildwood Park and Paxton Creek. Action 4.16.2.11. Engage in a dialogue with Hack about improving natural quality of the Greenbelt connections between the city and Wildwood Lake. This is done by minimizing the open space necessary in the new life safety campus, returning as much land as possible to forest and meadow conditions. So we can look at taking what's paved surfaces all around there for parking, understand how does that get rebuilt, redone, and returned back to forest. This is looking at improving the natural quality of all around the Hack campus. When you look at the Hack campus, they integrate the parking, open space, and green infrastructure plans that can be provided. Action 4.16.2.13. Explore parking coordination between Hack campus, the Farm Show complex, with future 7th Street parking system. Design McClay Street Bridge to accommodate easy crossing from 7th Street garages to the Farm Show complex. This is just making sense from a master planning point of view of coordinating all of these items. We know there are peak times when this area is filled to capacity, and there's times when it's not at filled capacity. So this is one of the things we need to look at is the ebb and flows of use and working together as partners in the same area, sharing some of these resources. So part of the problem with this is its ownership, its maintaining it, its liability. All these things sadly come into play in this, and our spaces suffer for that. If we can work out ways where maybe some of that land is put now into an entity that is a shared entity, one of the things that might happen is developing a good working relationship and agreement for these spaces. The state hospital grounds, we can try to square the city. What does that mean is looking at, we have a corner of the city to provide a place where transit happens. And this is mobility and getting up to a roundabout that's up past the state hospital grounds. Objective 4.16.3, complete a traffic loop connecting the hill uptown to square the city. Over the course of the 20th century, the hospital grounds diminished from over 1,000 acres to its current 183-acre core. It's fascinating to see that transformation. That would be a good side project to visualize that transformation. The Arsenal Boulevard Campus Group. This is a second institutional spine, McClay Street, Arsenal, Her Streets. Action 4.16.4.2. Explore with Capital Region Water the opportunity to make the Asylum Run watershed a demonstration project incorporating Arsenal and 17th Street PennDOT facility and including CRW's headquarters building in this. So this could be a really nice demonstration project of looking at green infrastructure and working with institutions to see what is possible within a watershed. This looks at the Farm Show complex, the PennDOT on Arsenal Boulevard at 17th Street and the 19th Street Armory. We got Arsenal Boulevard and Her Streets at 18th Street. There's a new district that's proposed in here. This is just an example that could be happening as themed development. We got Julia Street. This is just off of Cameron. And the idea is in Action 4.16.4.3. Explore the creation of an activity lifestyle district south of McClay, just along Julia Street. So this is also point 4, explore the military post as a shared location for the Navy and Marine Reserve Center. The State Capitol Complex and Objective 4.16.7, integrating the Capitol Complex into the city, planning together the Market District, the 6th Street Ridge, Capitol Complex, and extend the pedestrian-focused car-optional core of the city across the large area extending north of the transportation center. So this takes a huge amount of working between different groups to think of it as an alternative that's pedestrian-focused and car-optional. This would be amazing to see. I mean, there's already been some changes happening within how pedestrians are seen in Commonwealth Street and how people are crossing around here. You know, the raised crosswalks are important. How does this all become one area that's possibly one isolated pedestrian only? So that would be a great discussion beginning to have with the city and the state, and how this might be a jewel of local government working with state government in getting the needs of residents and really valuing pedestrians. So we talked about that last week with Streetscapes. You know, here would be the government putting its money where its mouth is and focusing on value of let's make things very highly pedestrian focused. And this goes back to dealing with Forster Street issues and Market Street issues, and we've got Front, 2nd, and 6th and 7th Street as well to deal with. So Chapter 4 conclusions. Overall, we had the city as a park as a theme. This is something to continue to remember in all of these little segments. We want to be completing the Greenbelt system, updating the park system, connecting the city's systems of campuses, identifying key sites for local playgrounds and parks. And ultimately, development of the Paxton Creek Greenway and Southern Green can transform the way the city's lived in. As we wrap this up looking at the conclusions, we look again to the City Beautiful movement and Warren Manning and the Greenbelt that's all around our city. We return back to this important diagram of taking the Greenbelt through the existing core of the city with a green grid of greenways, boulevards, and living streets. So this is the existing parks and Greenbelt, adding the proposed green grid, and we have a huge proposed green space system. So that's what we want to end with in Chapter 4, is understanding how do we build this green space system that's not only just for us at the moment, but has long-term effects that we can look back on another 20 years from now and say this was a good thing that we did for the foundation and bones of our city. So that wraps up Chapter 4 finally. Thanks for listening for this long segment so that we can have a better idea when you're out in public why certain things are being done, or ask why certain things are not being done, what is being addressed and what isn't. It's best to be an informed citizen on this because we can make Harrisburg the Harrisburg that we want it to be, and think about it in triple bottom line of people, place, and economics. Next week, we'll be starting in Chapter 5, which is the housing chapter. That's going to be another big chapter to chew through, so I'm looking forward to dealing with some of the housing challenges that we see as a city. Thanks again for listening. Take care.